Ethan Marshall had everything. A penthouse above the city, a rare collection of art on the walls, and a silent army of financial advisors maintaining the empire he'd built from scratch. At 38, he was the textbook definition of success. Polished, poised, always 3 steps ahead. He knew the market like he knew his own breath, and in his world of cold numbers and colder negotiations, trust was the rarest commodity. So when she entered his life, unexpected, radiant, and utterly composed, it wasn't love at first sight. It was curiosity. Strategic, analytical curiosity. The kind a predator feels when a new player walks into the jungle. Her name was Celeste. A name that sounded like silk and moved like water. She claimed to be a behavioral psychologist writing a book on high-functioning entrepreneurs and emotional detachment. She met him at an art auction, striking up conversation not with flirtation but with precision. She didn't laugh at his jokes. He questioned his worldview. She smiled only when necessary. And that, more than anything, captivated him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt observed. Not adored, not envied, but studied. It unnerved him and he liked it. What he didn't know was that she had chosen him long before he noticed her. Celeste was not writing a book. She was writing a plan. Months of research, psychological profiling, and simulated encounters had led her to him. Ethan wasn't her first, but he was the biggest. And the most arrogant. That made it thrilling. Their courtship was slow, elegant. She never asked for anything. Never stayed too long. Never revealed too much. She knew how to plant seeds of fascination. Careful compliments mixed with subtle critiques. When he talked about a merger, she'd counter with a quote from Nietzsche. When he boasted about his intuition, she'd challenge it with a hypothetical moral dilemma. Her presence became an enigma he couldn't quantify. And so, like a man obsessed with solving a puzzle, he kept inviting her in. Within 6 months, Celeste had mapped the architecture of his mind. She knew which childhood memory he avoided, which ex-girlfriends still lingered in his dreams, which fear kept him awake at night despite the security cameras and bulletproof windows. She found the cracks beneath the marble. And then she began to press. She never asked for access to his wealth. That would have made him suspicious. Instead, she made him believe he was in control. She praised his brilliance while gently guiding his decisions. She played the role of the supportive partner. Intelligent, beautiful, non-threatening. She created the illusion of emotional safety, the kind that powerful men rarely find. And when he began to open up, to confide in her about the isolation, the paranoia, the guilt that came with crushing competitors, she offered only presence. Not advice. Not solutions. Just presence. And that, more than anything, made her indispensable. Then came the accident. A fake break-in staged with surgical precision. Nothing stolen. No harm done. Just enough to trigger his dormant anxieties. Celeste didn't comfort him. She suggested gently that perhaps he needed to protect what matters most. Not the art. Not the stocks. But the legacy, the trust. The people he allowed close. He planted the idea of restructuring his wealth. Just hypothetically. For the future. Within a month, Ethan had moved a sizable portion of his liquid assets into a series of discreet trusts. One of which, at Celeste's suggestion, was created under a pseudonym. She insisted she didn't want to know the details. That's what made him trust her more. What he didn't know was that the lawyer she referred him to wasn't who he claimed to be. The trust wasn't in Ethan's control. Not really. And the pseudonym, a name Celeste had used before. By the time he proposed to her, she already had the passwords, the signatures, the legal paperwork. She didn't say yes immediately. She waited. Played the role of the overwhelmed woman unsure of love, intimidated by his world. That delay made him chase her harder. He began offering her more shares, access, property. Not because she asked. Because he needed to prove himself. To win her. The wedding never happened. One morning, Ethan woke up alone. Her side of the bed untouched. Her phone disconnected. Her clothes gone. At first he panicked. Then he searched. But she deleted every trace. Every email, every photo, every document. The lawyer had vanished. The trust no longer responded. The money gone. And with it, a portion of his soul. He tried everything. Private investigators. Interpol, even hackers. But she was a ghost. A ghost with millions. A ghost who had studied him so thoroughly, so patiently, that she knew exactly how long it would take before he stopped believing she ever loved him. The media never found out. Ethan paid for silence. He told his board it was a personal investment gone wrong. But in the sleepless hours of the night, staring at the empty space where she once sat reading her book, he wasn't angry. Because in some sick, brutal way he knew he'd finally met his match. And he lost. Ethan stopped attending social events. The invitations still came, gala dinners, yacht parties, foundation boards, but they sat unopened in a lacquered box by the door. The city outside his window pulsed with neon and champagne and the hum of late-night ambition, but inside his world was silent. His empire ran on autopilot, helmed by executives who revered him like a silent god. But he was no longer present. He was chasing a shadow. He began rewatching security footage, not just of the night she vanished but of every night they had shared. He studied her movements like a forensic analyst. The way she'd lean forward just slightly when she asked about his childhood. The way she never touched her wine until he did. The timing of her silences. Everything had been intentional. He saw it now not as a man betrayed, but as a man dissecting the elegance of a perfect crime. He traced her history or tried to. But Celeste, if that was even her real name, had no past. The woman he met at the auction? A fabrication. The university credentials? Even the stories she told, about her parents, her travels, her research, were borrowed identities stitched into a tapestry of lies so beautiful, so hypnotic, that he had mistaken it for intimacy. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at himself. For believing that someone like him could ever be loved without condition. He thought about other victims. There must have been others. Men like him, rich, controlled, convinced of their own superiority. Maybe one lived in Monaco. Another in Dubai. Maybe one didn't survive the collapse. Maybe Celeste, or whoever she truly was, collected not just money but legacies. She didn't destroy her targets. She hollowed them out piece by piece until they questioned their very sense of reality. And then she left. Months passed. Then a year. Ethan returned to work, but he was different, quieter. The board noticed. So did his competitors. He was still brilliant, still powerful, but colder. Like something essential had been burned out of him. A man rebuilt from fragments. He no longer dated. No longer smiled. He moved through meetings like a ghost wrapped in Armani. But somewhere deep inside him a question festered. Why him? Why did she choose him? Was it random? Was he just another mark? Or was there something darker? A flaw in his character, a punishment he didn't understand? Then one day a letter arrived. No return address. Just a cream envelope, handwritten, delivered by courier. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Only one sentence, written in the same careful script he remembered from the notes she used to leave by the bed. You were the easiest. He read it 10 times. Then he burned it. That night Ethan didn't sleep. He stared out the window until dawn, the city blinking like a giant machine beneath him. And when the sun finally rose, he didn't feel anger. Or humiliation. He felt a flicker of something else. She was still watching and he knew somehow that she was. Then she had made one mistake. She'd underestimated his obsession. What began as grief became purpose. Ethan began studying again, but this time not markets. Psychology and manipulation. He hired ex-intelligence officers, cryptographers, experts in deception. He built a private team, not to recover the money but to understand her. To decode the method behind her madness. To turn the tables. He traveled to Vienna, to Paris, to Tokyo, following rumors of women who matched her description. One had vanished after draining the account of a Saudi prince. Another left behind a Czech tech billionaire in a psychiatric clinic. The patterns were never identical. That was the brilliance. Became whatever the target needed most. 2 years later he found her. Not in a criminal file but in a painting. A gallery in Lisbon. A private showing a portrait in oil, a woman seated at a table, wine glass in hand, staring directly at the viewer. The eyes unmistakable. The curve of her smile infinitesimal. Signed by an anonymous artist known only as L. He bought the painting for €3 million without blinking. He had it hung in his study behind a sheet of one-way glass, where he would sit for hours studying her. Because now Ethan had a new plan. He no longer wanted justice. Or revenge. He wanted understanding. He wanted to find her, not to confront her, but to become her. to master the art of manipulation so completely that he could anticipate her next move. Because Ethan Marshall was no longer the man she had deceived. He was the mirror she had created. And he would wait. Not to win her back, but to trap her next.